The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Friday, May 26th, 2023. Thank you so much for joining me. I need to begin in Jacksonville, Florida, where the news organization, The Tributary, which is a Northeast Florida journalism collective, broke the story of 54-year-old Dexter Berry, who died as a result of not receiving his heart transplant medication while being detained by Jacksonville sheriff's officers. Now, the body cam footage has been released, and it shows that Dexter Berry let the arresting officer know that he needed his heart transplant medication and explained to him exactly why. He also let the staff at the sheriff's office where he was being processed, he let them know, documents show that he informed them that he needed his heart transplant medication, the medication that kept his body from rejecting the heart transplant that he waited years to get. Almost 12 years he waited to get a heart transplant. And just after 2 years after receiving the heart transplant, surviving all of that time, only to die as a result of the carelessness and the callousness of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. Now, the arrest and the subsequent passing of Dexter Berry, again 54 years old, received a heart transplant. And just after 2 days and being in custody with Jacksonville Sheriff's Department, they refused, or whether it was an actual verbal refusal that they gave him, whether they told him no, or whether they heard him and just simply did not fill this man's life-saving medication. As a result of that, he died. And here we are, just getting this information months later as a result of the reporting from the Tributary. I want to read from the article that they published just 16 hours ago by Nicole Mana, saying that the jail didn't give transplant medication despite knowing a Jacksonville man needed it. Records confirm. Jail staff knew Dexter Berry needed urgent transplant medication last November, but never gave him the medication, new Duval County jail records reveal. After 2 days in jail, the Jacksonville man died. The newly released medical records confirm the Tributary's earlier reporting about Berry, a heart transplant recipient who was arrested in November and told jail medical officers that he needed to take his anti-rejection medications. Jail staff who processed Dexter Berry's intake noted his medications were, quote, urgent, and they verified the medications with the Walmart pharmacy Berry used, but the staff never administered the drugs. Berry was arrested on November 18th. He spent 2 days in jail and was released after he paid a $503 bond. He died 3 days later. Here is reporting from local News Jax 4, who had an opportunity to interview the family members of the deceased.
Never in a million years would we have thought we would lose our dad, let alone in the way that he passed.
Dexter Berry leaves behind a wife and 4 children, including Janelle King and Dexter Berry Jr.
My dad was like my best friend, my whole life.
Police footage shows 54-year-old Berry in the back of a cop car on November 18th, telling the officer he has to have his medication.
I take rejection medicine for my heart transplant.
Okay.
I can't miss no doses.
Patients with organ transplants take daily medication to keep their bodies from rejecting the organ. According to Duke Health, stopping the medication can quickly cause the body to reject the heart and result in death.
My medicine costs $2,000, bro.
He explains he waited more than 2 years to get the heart transplant. The officer tells him he can get his meds at the jail.
If something happened to me, because my heart, it's going to be a problem.
Well,
Because I waited 27 months to get that my blood type.
okay, well, just make sure you tell them.
Yeah, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to tell them everything.
Now, again, he was arrested for a dispute with his neighbor over the Wi-Fi connection. There wasn't a fight. It was a verbal altercation, and he was arrested. And as a result, he's now dead. There are layers to problems with this story that really all of them have to be addressed. Simply the fact that this man was denied life-saving medication for whatever reason. And then the fact that he was arrested in the first place. right? This is like the broken glass type of policing. We're arresting people because they have a verbal dispute with their neighbors. They have an argument. And so we're dealing also with the over policing of black bodies that has been the hallmark of this country at all times. And so now the story actually bothers me even more because this man, Dexter Berry, moved to Jacksonville, Florida, so that he could be closer to the Mayo Clinic, which is the hospital that the institution that helped him through this process, that helped him get his transplant. He came to the city of Jacksonville in order to save his life. And ultimately, after his life was saved with a rare heart transplant, he lost his life because of the callousness and the carelessness of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department. Can you imagine? I mean, really just pause and think about the terror of this situation after years of waiting for a transplant, after years of struggling with this heart condition, and after successfully getting the transplant and receiving the medication that he needed to survive, he dies as a result of the ridiculousness that goes on in our policing agencies all across this country. See, as I look at this story, I try to really understand the timeline, the time frame. Was he arrested and this happened over the weekend? I'm trying to understand how this could happen when he made it clear at every step of the way. The staff at the jail even went as far as to confirm with Walmart, as you heard in the reporting. They confirmed that this was his medication, but yet and still, they collectively combined, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office collectively created the situation where a heart transplant patient dies. The heart transplant was wasted because of their efforts, because of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department, because of the carelessness. Perhaps there wasn't any maliciousness in this. Perhaps this wasn't the result of just pure racism. Perhaps this is not the result of whatever type of nefarious intentions I could probably think up when we talk about the policing agencies in this country. The carelessness involved in not attending to a human being. See, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life. We have the right to life. And anytime we have our life taken by this state, right? If this country is going to take your life, they are required, on paper at least, to go through the necessary due process to justify why it is that this state is going to take your life. And I'm not talking about the state of Florida. I'm talking about the United States, nation states. For an institution, for a country to take your life, it has to go through, at least on paper, the justification and the due process. But because of the sheer carelessness, I'm going to leave it there for now until we get more reporting, right? Because it is easy for me to have the suspicion that it is also because of this man's race. I mean, it is just too easy to assume that in a country where, in a state in particular, in a state where everything that is woke is being rejected. So you have to forgive me for being kind of being on a hair trigger, but I'm going to withhold that judgment. The fact that this could be rooted in race, I'm going to withhold that for more reporting. It is the sheer carelessness that is just as egregious here, because it's not only Dexter Berry who lost his life, but it's also the donor who gave up their heart. Under whatever circumstances, that person died. And as a result of that person's situation, they gave their heart, and it was a match, the rare case of finding a matching heart, only to have, can you imagine going through this for 12 years, 2 years after receiving a transplant, successfully surviving with the medication, only to have some Neanderthals in the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department refuse to give you your medication for whatever reason, including just the sheer carelessness and callousness with which we treat all of our inmates, not even inmate, not a prisoner. He was just arrested. He was arrested for an argument, a verbal argument with his neighbor, and they treated him just like they treat people in Rikers. They treated him just like they treated any other person that's arrested in this country, because that's how we treat our fellow human beings. Shame on Jacksonville. We're going to keep our eye on it, and I have already reached out to several organizations and organizers, several ministerial organizations that I have had the pleasure of working with over the last 6 months to a year. And we're going to do our part to see that this family and this man gets justice. And I will keep reporting on it as we get more information. I've reached out to the journalist over at the Tributary, and hopefully I can get her on so that we can talk about this in more detail. But this story just shows you how cruel our system can be. And I don't care what the justification is. I don't care if it was intentional or just neglect. I don't care what the circumstances were. It is the cruelty of our system that is the everyday norm across this country. But this story takes the cake, because it shows just how heartless our policing agencies can be. I'm sure that we'll be reporting a lot about the state of Florida in the months to come, particularly because of Ronald DeSantis announcing his run for presidency. And in the wake of his announcement, NBC News is reporting that the DeSantis administration in the state of Florida, state officials, solicited campaign cash from lobbyists. Again, this is from NBCnews.com. Officials who work for Governor Ron DeSantis' administration, not his campaign, have been sending text messages to Florida lobbyists soliciting political contributions for DeSantis' presidential bid, a breach of traditional norms that has raised ethical and legal questions and left many here in the state capitol shocked. NBC News reviewed text messages from 4 DeSantis administration officials, including those directly in the governor's office and with leadership positions in state agencies. They requested the recipient of the message contribute to the governor's campaign through a specific link that appeared to track who is giving as a part of a quote-unquote bundle program. A Florida lobbyist was quoted in the article saying the following, quote, "The bottom line is that the administration appears to be keeping tabs on who is giving and are doing it using state staff," a longtime Florida lobbyist said. You are in a prisoner's dilemma. They are going to remain in power. We all understand that. NBC News is not naming the specific staffers who sent the text messages because it could out the lobbyists who received the messages and shared them. I pause. I'm not really sure. Like, who cares? NBC News, out them. Why are we protecting lobbyists of all people? But I digress. Let me continue. From NBC News. Generally, political staffers are charged with raising money for political campaigns, and aides on the official side are walled off from those operations. The legalities of these solicitations depends on a series of factors, including whether they were sent to state-owned phones or if they were sent on state property. A longtime Florida election law attorney said that even if DeSantis aides are fundraising for the campaign in their personal capacity, off the government clock, it still raised ethical concerns. Quote, at a minimum, even if they are sitting at home at 9 p.m. using their personal phones and contacting lobbyists that they somehow magically met in their personal capacity and not through their role in the governor's office, it still smells yucky, the attorney said. There's a misuse of public position issue here that is obvious to anyone paying attention. Now, one of the quotes that I want to go back, there's a quote above that I want to reemphasize from another lobbyist that said the following, quote, "The bottom line is that the administration appears to be keeping tabs on who is giving and are doing it using state staff," a longtime Florida lobbyist said. Quote, "You are in a prisoner's dilemma. They are going to remain in power. We all understand that." And here is the additional insult to injury. The reason Ron DeSantis is going to remain in power is because a few weeks ago, he signed a piece of legislation handed to him by the supermajority in the Republican-led Florida House and Florida Senate that allows him to remain as governor as he runs for president, because prior to this, you had to leave the office in order to run for a higher office. But because Ron DeSantis has a plan and he feels that no one can stop him, and so far it looks like the only person that can stop him is his own self. I mean, he's getting the red carpet rolled out to him by all the media outlets. He's getting funded by billionaires extraordinaire. I mean, really, it's his own personality that is stopping him. But short of that, Ron DeSantis is riding on a political high. I mean, Disney is giving him a little bit of hell, but I mean, this is playing out well for him anyway because of the nature of the conservative movement right now. Ron DeSantis is riding high, and he's able to use this. Now, watch how this is going to work. Don't you think over the next 2 years, while Ron DeSantis is away playing, that his staffers in the state of Florida who are still going to be working directly for him as governor are going to continue this practice because they were doing it. They were already doing it. So imagine the type of pressure and influence they can peddle through these lobbyists to get more money, because not only is he a potential candidate for president or potential nominee for the Republican Party, but he's also the sitting governor. Oh, the criminality. Oh, the ethical violations. I mean, they're really going to put the squeeze on everyone in Tallahassee now. They're really going to put the squeeze on all of the lobbyists across the state of Florida. Anyone they can squeeze a dime out of, they're going to do it, because Ron DeSantis is in the perfect position of sitting power, his current power, and aspirational power, and the arrogance to go along with it to make him feel like he can get away with anything, which is why somewhere soon he's going to mess up.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
Here we go. Very special welcome to our newest patron. Shout out to Jerry Morris. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. This entire patron party is for you. Turn it up. Yeah. That beat is in the pocket, man. That go hard. Yeah. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, none of the commercial interruptions, and you get access to our bi-weekly patron party. We just had one last week. We'll have another one coming up next week. Matter of fact, I think next week we might have my birthday patron party. Patreon.com/The BPD Show, and we'll talk to the rest of you after this commercial break.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Yep.
Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yep. Welcome back. That Ron DeSantis story, to be quite honest with you, was just kind of a comic relief when you consider the other stories that I have today. I'm going to be reading from CNN.com. An 11-year-old Mississippi boy was shot by a responding police officer after he, the 11-year-old, called 911. Now, the boy survived. I want to start with that, and he has been released from the hospital. According to CNN, an 11-year-old Mississippi boy who was shot by police after he called 911 for help is recovering after being released from the hospital, according to his family. The family is calling for the officer to be fired and charged with the shooting. Adarian, the 11-year-old boy, was shot in the chest by an Indianola Police Department officer early Saturday morning while the officer was responding to a domestic disturbance call at the child's home, according to his mother, Nikayla Murray, and the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. Now, again, I need to make this abundantly clear. The 11-year-old boy who was shot called the police to come and help them. and he was shot. Murray told CNN that the, quote, irate father of another of her children arrived at her home at 4 a.m. Saturday. Concerned about her safety, Murray asked Adarian to call the police. Murray said the officer who arrived at the home had his gun drawn at the front door and asked those inside the home to come outside. Murray said her son was shot coming around the corner of a hallway into the living room. Quote, once he came from around the corner, he got shot, Murray said. I cannot grasp why. The same cop that told him to come out of the house, Adarian did, and got shot. He kept asking, why did he shoot me? What did I do wrong? She said. The shooting happened within what felt like 1 to 2 minutes after the officer asked those in the house to come outside. This, my son is 12. And I just thinking about the fact that I'm so grateful that this young child is still alive. Shot in the chest. Probably went for center mass just out of their training. If they're not trained to do anything else, they're trained to kill. They're not trained to de-escalate. If they're not trained to, actually protect and serve, they're trained to kill. So I'm grateful that this child is still alive. And then to hear the child ask the question, what did he do wrong? See, folks, I don't know. It really bothers me because when I do contextualize this for my own family and my own child, my own son who's 12, and I think about how much time you invest in raising your children and then to have their innocence snatched from them in such a violent way. And now this child is asking the question, what did I do wrong? And then you think about this child living with the trauma. And I'm so grateful this child is alive, but this child is now going to live, and this family has to live with this trauma. And now this child's life, his innocence, his joy, all of those things, which are critical to any human development. But for a black boy to have that snatched from him in this system, I don't know. It really bothers me because I'm looking at the picture of this young kid. He looks like a happy kid. He just looks like, and not that any of that matters, right? It doesn't matter that he is a happy child. What matters is that we have the kind of system that does this to children. What matters is that we have the kind of policing agencies in this country that does this to children. 12-year-old Tamir Rice, killed within less than 7 seconds of this officer pulling up on the scene in Ohio, killing Tamir Rice. How many times has this happened with children, and how many different ways could this particular story have ended even more horrifically? This child survived. So many of our children do not. And when you consider that this happened as a result of this young child calling for help, the police officers that he called to get help ultimately were the officers that shot him. What does that say to our children? Well, it says very clearly that we are in a system that disregards their humanity out of necessity, because you have to understand, for this system to be sustained, they have to have groups that they dehumanize to the point where the very people calling for help are the ones who get killed or get shot. I'm so grateful that this kid is alive, but it is part and parcel for so many examples that lead to the death of our people, of our children, at the hands of the very people who we call to help, to protect, to serve. They end up committing the violence. I want to speak to Black Christians for a moment. I want to talk to my people. sorry to everyone who's not black and everyone who's not a Christian, which is a good percentage of my audience who are not Christian. But I just got to talk to my folks for a second. It would appear to me as if the conservative movement has finally found the Achilles heel of the black community, of the black Christian community, with these Target boycotts and the fear mongering that goes on by the right around the LGBTQIA community, particularly the trans community. It seems as though conservatives have found that really sweet spot where they can stir up the homophobia and the transphobia in the black religious communities sufficient enough to gain traction on all of their agenda right now. And I'm speaking about, you've seen the videos, all the people who are now crashing Target and making a scene, tearing down pride displays. You've seen the video of the black pastor who works for Turning Points USA, Faith, the Charlie Kirk organization, who went into the Lego store and harassed the Lego employees because they were wearing small little rainbow pins. It really seems as though conservatism is hitting their stride in terms of infiltrating the black community. And please always remember that it's for political purposes. They don't really care about what you believe, black folks. But here's the real question. How far are we as black Christians going to go with our homophobia and our transphobia? I'm saying this as a black Christian, as a black preacher. I really need to know, because I don't know if my fellow black Christians are aware of it, but the people you are in league with, the people we are increasingly becoming in league with, these folks who are crashing targets and making videos, and the people who are asking Lego employees if they support gay sex, and they're doing that in front of kids. Like, I think people should know that is just the entry point for what's really going on in America. Because as I played on yesterday's episode, the end point for these religious zealots, well, they've made it clear. The end point for these Christian nationalists who are behind all of these videos that we're seeing going viral right now of them going into Target, going into all of the stores and doing and harassing people simply because they're gay or because they're wearing a pride flag. I wonder if people know that the end point is execution. They're calling for the murder and the public execution of people because they're gay. And I really want to know if black Christians know that. Because how far are we going to go with our homophobia and our transphobia? And I know quite a few people would reject that notion. They'll say, well, we're not homophobic. We're not transphobic. We hate the sin, not the sinner. Okay. However, whatever the case may be, all I know is that as we observe what's going on in this country, that the people who are behind the attacks on the LGBTQ community right now, they have made it clear that they want to publicly execute these people. And I wonder if black Christians are okay with that. I mean, there's a lot of white Christians who are okay with that because, well, it's growing, it's festering, it's being preached by more and more white evangelical pastors. I won't play the clips again, but again, just go to yesterday's episode and I played the clip after clip after clip. It only takes a few seconds to Google it, to search it out on YouTube and search it out on Twitter, anywhere, TikTok, and you can look for pastors who are calling for the murder of gay people. And you will see that the number of preachers who are preaching that on an every Sunday basis, that's growing. And I wonder if black Christians are aware of that end point. And if you are aware of that end point, are you okay with that end point? Because then I just kind of really want to know who I'm surrounded by. When I pull up to a church, I kind of want to know, am I surrounded by, the kind of Christians that would actually help their neighbor, or am I surrounded by the type of Christians who are going to get a pitchfork and go and try to publicly execute someone because they're gay? I just kind of need to know what kind of environment I'm in. Not that it matters, and not that I'm going to change what I say when I go where I go, but I just want to put it in front of us to help folks understand, while they are mobilizing you to go boycott Target because of Pride Month, that the people doing that organizing are also calling for the execution of gay people. So I want to know whose side you're on. I mean, what side are you on here? I think it's time to make it clear. I think it's time to make it plain. You are either on the side of basic decency and humanity, or you're on the side of these people who are calling for the execution of people publicly, public execution, no less, simply because they're gay. What side are you on, folks? Whose side are you on? I mean, let's be clear. You can say that you're on the Lord's side, which is something that I would say. If you ask me whose side I'm on, I'm going to say I'm on the Lord's side. And I can guarantee you that there's nothing about Jesus that is supportive of these white nationalist evangelical devils who are trying to stir up as many people as they can to get gay and lesbian transgender people executed. Patrons, stay tuned.